You're listening to Feathers, a podcast of stories of women walking in faith. I hope these stories inspire you and encourage you to take flight in your own faith. I'm your host, Amy Bennett, and this is Season 7, Episode 9. Feathers is an outreach of Abiding Ministries. Find more encouragement at abidingministries.net. Well, hey friend, and welcome to Feathers this week. It is hard to believe that last week we passed the halfway mark of this season. We are officially on the back half of our 7th season together, which is so crazy. And today I'm excited to have my guest, Erin Littleton. Erin is the co-founder of the Mighty River Project. It's a nonprofit that serves vulnerable Ugandan women and families by offering fair and steady employment, medical funding, school sponsorship, and discipleship. Her family has a wonderful adoption story we're going to hear a little bit about, and then hear more about the Mighty River Project. And the beginning of this week is going to sound a little bit different because right from the start, Erin and I just started chit-chatting. So we're going to pick up right from when Erin and I first said hello, and then we just keep trucking along. So I hope you enjoy it. Here is my conversation with Erin.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Erin. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound really good.
Okay, fantastic.
Awesome. Okay, the other thing that I was going to use Zencastr the other day, yesterday, it was giving me so much trouble with a guest, and we had to switch over to Skype. I'm like, I am not going through that again, so we're just going back to good old Skype.
Awesome. All
right. So I actually have to ask you, I noticed that we have a mutual friend on Facebook, Katrina Ryder. Do you know her?
Yeah, I do. I met her actually as part of, we were both doing a speaking thing for, at a church, me for the Mighty River Project, and she was kind of the keynote devotional person. So we met a few months ago, I guess.
Oh, goodness. So where are you?
In Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Oh, you're not far from me then. Okay.
Okay, where are you?
I am just south of Charlotte in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Okay, that's real near my sister who lives in Charlotte. So, yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah, our Katrina is she's in North Carolina. She's in Waxhaw. So she's not far from me. We actually met through blogging, of all things.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
That is such a small world, though.
I know. Well, and I've seen that several people that I have come across have been mutual friends with her. Mm-hmm. And she seems like one of those people that all roads lead back to somehow.
Yeah. Okay, so we can actually just keep going. It's just a casual chat. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and your family and what keeps you busy these days?
Okay, yeah. So my name is Erin Littleton. I am the director of the Mighty River Project and the co-founder, along with my husband. And so that's what I do kind of in my professional life. And then in my personal life, I've got 4 children, 2 adopted and 2 biological. So my adopted kids are 15 and 13, and then my 2 biological kids are 7 and almost 1. And we homeschool them, and so we've got a little circus going on at our house.
Oh my goodness. So I noticed the adopted children are older.
Yes.
Which came first?
We ended up adopting first, and that was sort of intentional and sort of a total God thing. So kind of briefly, our story is that in 2005, we graduated from college, my husband and I. We got married later in 2005, in like August. And then in January of 2006, we hopped a plane to Uganda. We worked at an orphanage there for about 6 months. And everybody facetiously said, you guys are going to come back with kids. We know you can't go to an orphanage for 6 months and not fall in love and adopt some kids. And we were like, no, we're really young and we've just graduated and we're not going to do that. Well, the second day there, we went on a boat ride on the Nile River, and there was a little girl who was in my husband's lap. And they were just fast friends in just a different way than any of the other kids there. And they kind of latched onto each other. And then on about the third day, I walked into a room and my eyes fell on this little boy who was the one in the corner. And my heart is for the kid in the corner. And so we were fast friends from then on. And those two kids that were just different than the rest of them turned out to be biological siblings. So it was a real,
Oh
so it
my
was
gosh,
a real
that's
nod
crazy.
from God that yes, this is what you need to pursue. And so we kind of put down our plans, which were not as good as God's plans as it turned out, as they never are. And we ended up just through a lot of prayer and a lot of kind of fear and discouragement, we kind of said, this is what we feel like God's calling us to do. And we don't know the end. We don't even know the legal process of this because adoption in Uganda, 10 or 12 years ago was a very new thing. And so we just decided we're going to take the first step. And if the door opens, then we'll take the next step. And if the door closes, well, at least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering about these kids. We'll know that we at least tried. So, so we kept on stepping.
The doors kept opening, huh?
The doors kept opening. Sometimes we had to, shoulder through them and pray right through them and have 75 of our friends up at night praying for the doors to open, but slowly but surely they opened, and it'll be in December they will have been home for 10 years.
Oh my goodness, you're 10 years into that. So
we are.
They would have been 3 and 5-ish?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
3 and 5. Okay. So they had a little history when they
came
home. So we're 3 years into our adoption.
Yeah.
So I'm so curious, 10 years in, what has the transformation been in the last 10 years?
I mean, it's been a transformation for all of us. I think in some ways it was really good that my husband and I were just these young, naive people who had never parented anyone before because we didn't have these expectations. And we were all just kind of, making it up as we went along a little bit. But I will say that there's been a lot of growing on all of our parts. There's been a lot of healing on all of our parts. And I'll say that I'm a vastly different parent to my 7-year-old and my almost 1-year-old than I would have been if I hadn't raised my two adopted kids for several years before my biological kids came along. So it's been a neat journey.
So I'm just wondering, did you see any kind of turning point for your adopted kids at any sort of at 5 years we really hit a stride, or at a year in, I don't know, maybe there's not, maybe the whole thing has just been a steady journey, but has there been a turning point for you? I
think all of parenting is such a roller coaster. And we have two kids and while they came from very similar circumstances, their journeys towards healing and processing and assimilating have been so vastly different. But I will say that for both of them, when they came face to face with Christ and they started following Jesus, that is when a huge darkness to light transformation took place in each of them. There had to be something supernatural that happened in their hearts that, I think in none of our lives does anything really make sense without that plumb line of Jesus. And they needed that to make sense of a lot of things. So for both of them, I would say that was a huge turning point.
And what age was that for them?
A couple of years ago for one of them and about 8 for the other one. Okay. So it's been a few years. Yeah.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about what you mentioned, the Mighty River Project. I know this is all tied up together somehow, your trip to Uganda. So tell us first a little bit about what the Mighty River, if I can say it all right, the Mighty River Project is, first of all.
Sure. So, well, I guess to dovetail that adoption story, and that'll kind of let you know a little bit of why we started the Mighty River Project. So we were in that orphanage, and what we discovered was that probably close to half of the kids in the orphanage were not true orphans in the sense that they had no living parents. Probably about half of them actually had parents or relatives that just couldn't provide for them for whatever reason.
That's so interesting. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just interviewed Katie Davis Majors in Uganda.
Yeah.
And she shares the same story. She's like, it's not that they actually are orphans and don't have parents. It's just like the parents can't take care of them. It just astonishes me.
Yeah, it's really just sad. It's really, I don't think that's what God places the lonely in families. God wants us in family units. So, yeah, it was really disheartening for us to realize, wow, these kids have loving parents that just can't provide for them. And so the more we prayed about that, and then once we got our kids, we had to come home to do our home study and all of that. And so once we were all at home together in the States, and half of our family was still Ugandan, we were really haunted by this situation that was going on, and how can we get on the front end of this? And that whole an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure kind of idea, just kept on resurfacing. And we thought, well, if we could partner with these parents and come alongside them, then maybe, in a decade or a generation, we wouldn't have as many of these kids with parents in orphanages or in institutional care. And so the Mighty River Project was kind of born out of that idea. And we named the Mighty River Project the Mighty River Project after that verse in Amos 5:24 that says, "Let justice roll on like a river." And it's not just, and it's not fair, and it's not, God's best for this world that just because of economics, kids are not being raised by their parents. And so we wanted to get on the front end of that. So what the Mighty River Project does is that we partner with vulnerable women. Right now we partner with 9 different artisans, all women, and then we're about to add 2 additional ladies. And they all have some sort of vulnerability, either a chronic health condition or some of them are single mothers, just all kinds of different vulnerabilities that would make them kind of candidates for, if 1 or 2 bad things happened, they might have to put their children into institutional care or send them to live with a relative. And all these ladies also have craft skills, and so we're able to come alongside them, purchase their crafts at a fair price, so they get a fair monthly income that they know what that's going to be and they can depend on it and plan for it. And then also as a job benefit, they all of their children get sponsored to go to school through the Mighty River Project. Anyone in their family, in their immediate household, can go to the doctor at one of 2 different clinics that we partner with. And we sponsor that medical care. And then the thing that I think is most exciting and most kind of life-changing for them is that we have a lady who meets with them a couple of times a month to mentor and disciple them.
Oh, that's so wonderful. So is she on the ground in Uganda then? She
is. So we have 3 staff people that are Ugandan natives. So one is our director, Fred Nkoba. His wife, Becky, is the one who does our sponsorship program. And then there's a lady named Lois who's our discipler.
That's so good. So I'm just wondering, how did you guys decide on this? Kind of this model?
It was through so much prayer, so much reading books. I'm not even sure if we had read When Helping Hurts or if it was out when we started this 7 years ago, but books like that just kind of gave the picture of kind of holistic care, the picture of sustainability and more than just throwing money at a problem. That yes, there is money that's needed, but there's also dignity that's needed. And when we just rely on handouts, and we just give things to people, there's not a lot of dignity in that.
Talk a little bit about that book, because I don't know that everybody's read that. I haven't read that. I've heard it and seen snippets out of it. When Helping Hurts, I know doesn't it talk about short-term missions as well as
it does talk a little bit about that. It just talks really about how sometimes we go into a situation, and forgive me if I don't get it all right. It's been several years since I've read the book, but just basically the concept that sometimes we go into a situation with our own cultural sunglasses on, and we see things through a very Western perspective, when really what we're doing that's really well-meaning and that on the surface is really helpful could be impacting these communities with unintended consequences. And one kind of great example of that is, like, let's say we went in as the Mighty River Project and somebody had donated, 200 T-shirts for us to take in and hand out to these ladies and their families and their community. Well, approximately 30 to 40 of the people that we serve, moms and children, are in one little community. And so if we handed out T-shirts to this community, then the lady that sells T-shirts at the market might not be able to feed her family that month because nobody's really buying T-shirts then. So something that you go on the surface and say, wow, I'm getting on a plane and I'm doing this wonderful thing because, Jesus tells us to clothe the naked and to help the poor. And, there are sometimes unintended consequences, even with good intentions.
Oh, interesting. So I love that. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You had said that there was dignity needed, and you were talking about how you guys decided on this model. I'm just wondering about, the types of things that you sell. And did you bring somebody in to teach this stuff? Like, how did that work?
Oh, yeah. So it was kind of neat because the first lady that we partnered with was Dorothy. And her brief story is that she 5 or 6 years ago was really sick for several weeks and bedridden. And while she was really sick, her husband decided, and Dorothy is the mom of 5 kids. While she was really sick, her husband decided that he was going to leave her. I don't know the full story on that, but she was left as the mom of 5 kids, flat on her back, really sick, with no income. And so one of her friends came to her and said, you have to learn to support yourself now because, there's nobody else that's going to do it. And so I want to take you to this basket making class. And she tried her hand at this basket making. It's traditional banana fiber baskets. And she makes these incredible, incredible baskets that are just so beautiful and so colorful and so sturdy. And she was able to start selling those in the tourist markets to sustain her family. And then she started teaching others in her community to do the same. But the problem with that was that there wasn't that much market for these baskets. So they might go to the tourist market and only sell 3 baskets, which is not enough to sustain an entire family or entire group of ladies. And so that was where the Mighty River Project came in. So these ladies had these craft skills, and just really no market for them.
Okay, and so then how did you move to the other stuff?
So we just, basically our director, Fred, is very good at, kind of sussing out needs, hearing about ladies who, might need our services, our partnership, and kind of within that community, coming alongside them. So it's really our Ugandan staff who, at this point, are the main ones that find out about the needs and about the skill sets.
And do you guys sell? I mean, I saw that you guys have an online shop, but is it mainly selling in the tourist areas in Uganda, or do you guys also do online or in the States? How does that work?
So the Mighty River Project only sells in the States. Our ladies still do sell in the tourist markets, but that's kind of aside from what we do. So we have an online store, and then we also do home parties. We do craft markets and things like that. And so we're always taking our show on the road. So we have the baskets that Dorothy and her crew make, and then we have jewelry and also textiles.
Very interesting. Well, and I've seen that. I think that model has been, I think now there's a lot of sort of companies that is doing that, and I love that. I have actually, I'm part of a earring of the month club, and I love it because I'm going to buy earrings anyway, right?
Absolutely.
So I may as well get them and make it a win-win for everybody. So I am a big fan of that model. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say the thing that we love about fair trade, especially for gifts, is that if you go and get a gift at Target, it's honoring the recipient like a gift that's, is meant to do. But if you get a gift that's fair trade, it's honoring, the recipient of the gift, but it's also honoring the hands that made the gift. And it's more than just the earrings, or it's more than just the basket, but it speaks to a greater story, which I think is really beautiful.
I totally agree. Well, I want to step back a little bit as you guys were beginning to think through this and, as we like to say, take the leap of faith and to do this. Talk about what obstacles did you face? I'm just wondering, was there fear involved? Was there, wondering if you can trust God? Where was kind of your faith and sort of the obstacles to getting to this up off the ground?
So, we started the Mighty River Project thinking that our family was actually going to go to Uganda and move back and run the whole thing. And it just never, even with the baskets and things, we were going to teach the ladies how to make the baskets. We were going to have a center there and do more of the teaching, or pay somebody to do the teaching. I don't know how to make baskets. But that just never financially worked out. And then the more that we realized that it wasn't going to financially work out, the more that was a gift to our program and to our artisans, because that meant that, instead of having to deal with the overhead of having a whole center, these ladies could work out of their homes. More of the money that was coming into the Mighty River Project can be, put into our ladies and their needs and their growth. So what we originally thought was a real frustration that, we have this big dream to move back to Uganda and that's not going to work, has ended up, being, I think, the best thing for everyone.
That's so good. God is so good at that.
Yes. His plans are always better than mine.
Yes.
It doesn't occur to me sometimes.
Yes. So I'm wondering if there's moments that you can talk about where you have seen God really provide for, I don't know, for the Mighty River Project or specifically for the women. I'm just thinking about his provision and how that's looked for you guys.
Yeah. So there's one story that, this story is just so close to my heart. We started the medical fund almost 4 years ago. So before that, we had, the fair trade piece of it. But we wanted to make sure that these ladies felt like they could go to the doctor and take their kids to the doctor when they needed. And so about 4 years ago, when we were in Uganda visiting, we were having a meeting with our artisans where we were kind of spelling out what the medical fund entailed, how to get to the clinic, what to say once you get there to make sure that you fall under the Mighty River Project umbrella. And there's one of our artisans' name is Kevin. And Kevin raised her hand. And I have to tell you about Kevin, that she has a congenital spinal defect. And so instead of walking vertically, she walks like an upside down V. So like with a pair of flip-flops on her feet and a pair of flip-flops on her hand. That's how she gets around.
Literally. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so she, because of that, could not give birth naturally. And she was pregnant. And so as we're, spelling out this whole medical fund, Kevin raises her hand in the back, and she's kind of quiet. And she says, well, thank you for the medical fund, but I'm sure you're not going to pay for childbirth. And we said, yes, Kevin, like healthy babies are super important. We definitely are going to pay for childbirth. We're committed to that. And she says, okay, thank you, and puts her hand down and sits down. And, we carry on with the meeting, and a few minutes later, she raises her hand, and we say, yes, Kevin, do you have another question? And she kind of stands back up, and she says, but I know that you're not going to pay for my delivery because I have to have a C-section. And we said, yes, we will absolutely pay for your C-section. We'll come to find out after this meeting that this was her third baby. Her first two babies were born by C-section, but because of her disability, she was not being looked at kindly at the government hospital where she was going for all of her prenatal checkups and things. And so she would have to bribe every hospital employee that she came in contact with. So she would have to go to the gate and pay a bribe to get in the gate. She would have to pay a bribe to the receptionist. She would have to pay a bribe to the nurses. She would have to pay a bribe to the doctors just to get them to notice her and treat her with some sort of humanity. And so she was just so terrified to go through that whole process again with this third baby. And so that was, I guess, in the context of provision, this was her lack. She had this huge lack of kind of dignity and peace about giving birth. And because of this medical fund that is funded through donations and through proceeds that come from the craft products that we sell, she was able to give birth in a clinic that is run by a church. So instead of, her baby, her little girl, who's almost 4 now, being delivered by hands that thought her mom was a burden and not to even be dealt with or looked at, her little baby was delivered by hands that loved Jesus and hands that treated her mom with dignity and treated that little girl with dignity. And so that was, that just stands out to me as just God allowed us to roll that medical fund out just totally in the right timing for Kevin and her little girl to be served in that way. And she named the little girl Gift, which I think speaks to the whole situation a little bit.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's so great to hear. So it's been, how long have you guys been, I mean, it's gotta be several years now. How long have you been operating?
We're about 6 years in. And we've gone from 4 artisans to now we have 9. And then we're about to add the other 2 basket artisans. So
how do you guys pick, like, who's going to be an artisan, and do they apply? How does that work?
It's a total really God thing. We, like I said with Kevin, it was just really that God allowed us to show up at the right time for the right person. I think it's the same for all of the artisans. One of them we kind of heard about through word of mouth and approached her, our bead lady, our jewelry lady, whose name is Maria. She was actually falsely accused by her employer, and because her employer was rich and she was like a day laborer, she was thrown in prison. and there's really no right to a speedy trial in Uganda as the same way we would think of here. And so we actually approached her, hey, how can we help you? How can we partner with you? Because she had two little, probably at that time, a 12 and a 14-year-old daughter who were home alone. And so we were able to step into that situation, and our people on the ground were able to partner with her to get her back on her feet once she was exonerated.
Okay, so you kind of take it case by case wherever you guys.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good thing about being kind of smallish. We're okay with being kind of smallish because that means that we really get to intimately know every lady's story and every lady's situation, and we really get to kind of come alongside them in ways that are tailor-made for them.
So it's been 6 years and I guess 10 since you've been there at least the first time. What do you see as, it's been that many years. What difference have you seen just overall in the artisans, in the community, as you guys have kind of rolled out this ministry?
We've seen the children get healthier. We've seen, we've done like nutrition clinics with the ladies. We've partnered with different ministries to do like nutrition clinics. We've seen the children start eating better because their moms have the money to feed them better. We've seen them not have to go to the doctor as much now that, the medical fund has been in place for a while. And we've just seen the ladies really come to trust each other more. They're functioning as way more of a community now. And I think that, for anybody, you're going to have a lot stronger family ultimately when you have this community. Truly, it takes your village to do family well. Mm-hmm. And these ladies have started really supporting each other as a village. But then I think one of the most beautiful things that I've seen is that these ladies, have, as they've been discipled, they've just really grown spiritually and in some really neat ways. We can tell a difference when we visit. And our discipler, Mama Lois, she says, I'm really glad that these ladies have steady employment. I'm really glad they can go to the doctor, but that's not my goal. My goal is that these ladies are in heaven with me. And we've really seen, a huge difference in kind of a lot of these ladies' spiritual walks.
It's so encouraging. Definitely the goal. I think it's exactly like she said. I think it's really great to provide some justice and some love and opportunity for women, but to truly be able to, show them the gospel. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. That is truly the end goal.
So what do you guys have? You guys are doing you have the artisans, and you said you had a medical fund. Mm-hmm. You guys are continuing that. Do you have any plans for anything else? What does the future look like for you guys?
We would really like to add more artisans. We want to go, our mantra is that we want to go deep with these ladies before we go wider with other ladies. Mm-hmm. And so we want to get, the ladies that we have really solidly on track, and then move from there. So kind of our next year or two goal is to maybe add a handful more artisans. And then maybe, I don't know, that's really the heart of what we do, is just partnering with these specific artisans. So I would love to see that, in 2 or 3 years, we have several more artisans, because, I think that it seems small on paper to think, well, wow, they're helping 9 artisans, or 11 artisans. But then when you think about the ripple effect of, like, currently I think our 9 artisans have almost 40 kids. And so it's not just these 9 artisans that we're sending out into the world. It's these 40 kids who...
And for generations.
Absolutely. So that's really my prayer, is that these ripples go farther than I can foresee or anticipate. I'm really excited about the fact that all of our kids are getting school sponsorship, because that means that instead of sending out generations who are going to remain in poverty, the next generation could be the teachers and the lawyers and the pilots. And, these kids have dreams. And I just pray that as their moms grow in faith, their moms pour that out onto them, because we could go in and we could teach the kids. But I think that there's something really uniquely special about just the faith of a mama, and watching your mom's faith and watching her grow up in Jesus, and the way that can be poured out on these kids, and the way that they can hopefully pour it out on just the bigger communities that they live in the future.
Yeah, that's so good. So if people want to, get involved, I know you mentioned donations, obviously, to go buy the product. What are the ways that people can get involved with the Mighty River Project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and so donations are great, and we really appreciate them and can use them to do a lot of good in Uganda. Specifically, in the next probably month or so, we are going to add several more children who need sponsorship for the next school year, because we are adding these 2 artisans. And then every family also has a medical sponsor, and so we're going to be seeking 2 medical sponsors as monthly donors for these families. So that's one way you can get involved, and it's a really neat way, because there's tons of correspondence that can go on between the families and the sponsors. And so we've seen really beautiful relationships starting to develop between sponsors and the families that we serve. Buying the products, helping us to spread the word about the products. I like to say the farther that the idea and the information and the word about the Mighty River Project spreads here, the farther that the help can spread in Uganda. And so just spreading the word. The baskets and the jewelry and the textiles make wonderful gifts. So as Christmas approaches, checking us out and purchasing some of our products, and then following us and sharing and helping to spread the word on social media. So we're on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Well, before we go, I just wanted to just to give you opportunity to talk about one more thing. I just am thinking about maybe somebody that's listening that's, has an idea and, they're not sure whether to move forward with it. Maybe they do have, fear they're dealing with, or, scared, how are all the details going to work out, which you've talked about. But what kind of word of encouragement would you give to somebody that's maybe thinking about, taking a leap of faith?
I think I would just say, based on our adoption process and our founding of this nonprofit, I would say just take the first step. God is so intimately involved in the details of our lives, and He just loves us. He just loves us so much, and He wants to be involved in every aspect of our lives. And so I would just say to trust in that and rest in that and take the first step and see where that takes you, and keep taking steps as He allows.
That's so good. So true. Take the first step. I love it. Well, I think we will end on that. Thank you so much for sharing your story tonight, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
One second. All right, guys, I hope you were so inspired by Erin's story. Just 2 things from this episode that's going to stay with me. Number 1 is just how their adoption story, how God really just knit the hearts of both Erin and her husband to each sibling separately. And then they come to find out the 2 kids are siblings. I mean, oh my goodness. It's like major movie drama in there. I mean, you can really write a movie out of that. It's crazy. I just think that God is just the best author. He writes the best stories, and I really love how He wrote that one. And then what came out of that is their heart for these families in Uganda that were really struggling. You know, I love how through much prayer, they were able to approach them with this holistic care that brought them dignity and kept the families together. And goodness, I just really love how they are loving people. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this week. I appreciate you so much for being here each and every week. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week on Feathers.